All right, everyone, we should be live. We'll make sure, as always, that that is indeed the case cross-platform, namely on Rumble. I think the Rumble rants are working. Well, it's open anyway. It's available for people. We'll see about how it works. We've got a lot to cover today. I think we got 11 different news stories, actually, to plow through, so it'll take a little time. Also, for those of you watching right now, there will also be a link in the description. In fact, let me pin it on YouTube to the debate I'm going to be having later, roughly 3 hours from now, with JF actually on the Crucible. Let me get to my my YouTube loads here and pop it up there really quickly. I'll just pin it for people in the live chat. Give me a moment. Give us a chance, precious. Give us a chance. I know I was watching the completely screwed over dub of Bakshi's Lord of the Rings the other day. Posted it on Rumble and BitChute, actually, so it's available. Pin the message. And yes, slow mode is on, sad to say, because otherwise I won't be able to keep up with anything. Just a sec, let me make sure that we're live on Rumble. There are people watching, supposedly. Are we live? Yes, indeed we are. Excellent. So we'll be going through a lot of news today. I will be, of course, doing the super chats as well. Ziggy Maru is posting a bunch of spoons over on Twitch. And yes, Professor Plaguebad, it's not even 6 a.m. yet. Yes, this is definitely the graveyard shift for most U.S. viewers. I realize that, but I wanted to get this done fairly early so that I have time to prep for the debate that I'm going to be having with JF. My thoughts about that, and it is pinned. If you're watching on YouTube, I pinned it in the comments there. It's available. You can click that link. Make sure to bookmark it for about 3 hours for now. My thought is we're probably not going to actually be debating too much about Roe v. Wade, maybe the pragmatism of it. But I think we're both in general agreement over that particular issue. It's more of a debate about abortion in general. He happens to be pro-life, I'm pro-choice, and so, that's what we'll be sparring over. Helio Bastet, hello from Essex, Old England. Your daily videos are an absolute treat. Clank on, Governor. Thank you very much. Yes, we'll be talking about the heat wave that is now broken, at least here. We'll be talking about Hunter Biden's laptop, although that particular archive link doesn't appear to be loading very well. We've got a bunch of shit to cover, most of which is humorous in nature, some of which is more serious. So yes, the debate link is available. Pinned comment, if you're watching on YouTube, it is in the chat at the top, and you can take that, and that's live in roughly 3 hours. So that was the first thing that I wanted to talk about there. Just letting people know. I will share it out about, half an hour beforehand cross-platform. So I will be putting that out there for people. Make sure to share the link to that, to the Crucible debate with JF. Jordan B. Hello from Southern California. Please send us water. Lol. Isn't the mega drought there basically over? Let me check the U.S. drought monitor. I think there was some progress there, actually. Who's thirsty? Well, there is a moderate drought there throughout most of California. Looks like Texas is getting more hammered now. Hell, there's a dry spell over in New England, over in Vermont, New Hampshire, places like that. Clearly, this is evidence that we need more taxes. That's the only thing that can possibly stop droughts. And hurricanes, heat waves, cold snaps, polar vortex. All of these things are stopped by giving the government more of your money. Just to be clear, we're not disinfo peddlers here. We're not science deniers. Give the fucking government more pieces of paper and it'll solve the problem. That's exactly what happens. Anyway, the first news story actually deals with that in part. We will be covering this in 2 different segments. The beast mode presidency. For Biden to declare a climate emergency would be a serious abuse of power. This is a Wall Street Journal opinion piece, so take that to the bank when the legacy media is going after Joe Biden for executive overreach. It's pretty significant. Democrats denounced Donald Trump as a dictator for invoking emergency powers to build his border wall after he was blocked in Congress. Well, now they're demanding that President Biden declare climate change a national emergency to advance their anti-carbon agenda that Congress won't pass. Apparently, dictators are in the eye of the beholder. It is worth noting that Joe Biden has massively outstripped any previous president in executive orders at this point in his office by a very large margin, by the way. I think he's up almost to 100 executive orders, and most of those will be ripped apart by whoever comes next, presumably Trump, possibly someone else. This would be an even greater abuse of power than Mr. Trump's repurposing of military funds for the border wall. Yes, but in a roundabout way, that was actually justifiable. National security and border control, those mesh fairly well. Saying that it's too hot this summer sporadically, or there's too little rain or something, I don't know whether that will actually pass constitutional muster. This is probably going to get injuncted by a federal court. It probably won't even make it before the Supreme Court because it's so far beyond the pale. Yeah, while a president may sometime need to act with dispatch during an emergency, climate change isn't close to such an event. Climate change is neither sudden nor unexpected. The world has warmed by 1.1 degrees Celsius since the late 19th century, and the pace of future warming is uncertain and depends on multiple variables. Yeah, it could go in the other direction. That would actually be an emergency. If it cools too much, then you've got a problem, because then the carrying capacity of the world suddenly plummets and people start starving. And it won't just be because of the Biden bread lines. It won't just be because of lockdownerism at that point. It'll be far, far worse. Here are some of the ways progressives now want Mr. Biden to impose his climate agenda without Democratic assent. Halting oil exports. Well, if you don't have enough oil domestically, that actually kind of sort of makes sense, although it would wreck huge swaths of the economy, causing problems. Stop oil and gas drilling in the outer continental shelf. Yes, let's leave the fuel in the ground and not take it. Let's let somebody else take it instead, which seems to be the NIMBYism of like the Paris Climate Accords. Use the Defense Production Act to build green energy. Yes, the government is so good at managing these things. It will totally work to build solar panels. I like when they try to compare it to World War II and or the Cold War. And they say, well, we compelled companies to build ammo or something like that before, and it worked. Yes, but that was when there were 1/10 as many regulations. You're not telling people that they don't have to abide by all the regulations and taxes and other horseshit. You're just trying to tell them what they can and cannot do with their factories. Should be ruled unconstitutional. Private business should be private business. It shouldn't be able to be co-opted instantly by the government under an EO. Repurpose funds as Mr. Trump did. Yes, the left wants to rob money from the coffers to build more electric vehicles, aka coal-powered cars. We'll see what he actually does with this. I don't think that he's actually issued the climate emergency. Again, probably falls flat as far as the constitutional nature of it. I don't know if Rumble Rants is working. Usually when we have almost 100 people viewing, there's some Rumble Rants that come through, but all I see is people on the main comments. So I'm hoping that we're not having a glitch again. We'll see. It'll take a little time. The second piece of news that we have today involves Italy. This is only, this is less than an hour ago, I think. Italy's Draghi resigns, signaling early elections, fresh uncertainty for economically strained country. Yes, the premier, Mario Draghi, who is deemed Super Mario, and this is apparently not ethnocentric in any way to make that reference, resigned Thursday after key coalition allies boycotted a confidence vote, signaling the likelihood of early elections and a renewed period of uncertainty for Italy and Europe at a critical time. So he has decided to, I don't even think he's going to be caretaker. He's just said, fuck it. It is going to be a thankless job, sticking around to be the executive of some of the wrecked economies in Europe and elsewhere in the world. And it's due to lockdownerism. You lock down your economy, you throttled imports, exports, transport, travel in every way. You throttled everything about society. You crippled the population's health by making them stay home. They couldn't go out for a walk half the time for a better part of a year. And now you've got economic problems. Who could have possibly seen that coming except for a bunch of so-called conspiracy theorists like myself? We saw it coming. Apparently, none of the mainline politicians did, which should show you why these people should be kicked out of office. So he is leaving office. And the right-wing coalition, oddly siding with elements of the left in Italy right now to say, fuck it. The system that we have right now is clearly not working. and so we need a new election. And they're expected to end up with a right-wing coalition running the show. We'll see whether they're pro or anti-lockdownerism and how populist they are, though, because the Italian political system is a little bit complex, you could say. There are quite a few coalitions and odd parties there that have views that are all over the place. So you'll have a right-wing group, but it wants base salary guarantees. You'll have a left-wing group, but it wants to throttle migration. It's kind of like nothing else, I think, in the world. I think the French system comes close. You know, Macron, supposedly centrist, even right-leaning economically, pro-lockdown. Le Pen, representing effectively a bloc that economically is more to the left of Macron's bloc, anti-illegals and against lockdownerism. It's very, very strange in some of these European countries. It's certainly totally different from what we get in the United States. It's also different from the Netherlands, here where I'm residing right now. It's much more clear-cut and easy to understand, I think, in the Netherlands than in Italy. There's probably a historical reason for this, but we'll see what happens there. Here's some headlines. Shame headlined La Stampa on its front page. Italy betrayed, said La Repubblica. Farewell to Draghi's government, said Corriere della Sera. Mattarella had rejected Draghi's original resignation last week when he first offered it after the Five Stars boycotted a confidence vote tied to a bill aimed at helping Italy endure soaring inflation and energy costs. Yes, their inflation rate is substantial, by the way. Mattarella asked Draghi to return to Parliament to brief lawmakers on the situation, which he did on Wednesday, in appealing to party leaders to listen to calls from unity from ordinary Italians. Will there be unity or will there be disunity? Probably the latter. We're seeing that all over the world right now. We have all of these reshufflings of government. We've got there, you've got France, well, technically speaking, the lead up to that here in the Netherlands, certainly in the United States, Canada, and elsewhere. Look at what's happening in the UK, and their economy, of course, more developed than that of Italy. You have the same basic premise, the same basic problem. While the next steps were unclear, the outcome suggested Mattarella could dissolve Parliament, paving the way for early elections as soon as late September or early October. The legislature's 5-year term had been due to expire in 2023. This seems to be a uniquely European and pan-European thing. You see it a lot in Latin America as well. Anywhere where there was Spanish or Portuguese influence, certainly. Constant dissolution of government simply because people aren't getting their way. And they refuse to negotiate with one another, and so they just repeatedly dissolve the government until someone has a clear majority. Very strange. Mojo Hansen, Biden confused cancer with his BS asthma story. Yes, it does appear, to be clear, and we will be talking about this as I made a video on it this morning, Joe Biden does not appear to have cancer, which is good because that means that Kamala is not waiting in the wings, rubbing her greedy hands together and just waiting for him to take his last breath. Long life to you, Joe Biden, at least until you're out of office. If you can only save us from Kamala ever being in the Oval Office, that will be your one major accomplishment, to tell the truth. Did you know gaming weird? Hey, Sticks, I have mono. Oh, that's not good. The kissing disease. You making out with a groupie lately? Spike 11117S. Hey, from Kentucky. Which world leader will resign next? Also, check out the game Stray. Never heard of it. Hope it's open world and you can build shit in it. Who will resign next? Could be Biden, ultimately. Apparently, he believes that he has cancer, so I'm just joking, but it'd be funny if he did. Imagine he's convinced, because he's demented, he's convinced that he's been diagnosed with cancer, even though he wasn't. And so he tenders his resignation anyway, and people accept it, and they don't even bother to tell him to talk him down because they realize that actually it's just dementia. I'm like, well, he may not have cancer, but he has something that's just as bad. So yeah, we'll let him go out to pasture, and we'll let him go sundown on his ranch or something like that. His farm in Delaware. I'm sure they won't grow marijuana crops for John Boehner or anything like that. Yeah, who will resign next? Well, Macron no longer has a majority. If he doesn't get his way enough because he wants to cast himself off as Jupiter, he may resign. He's about the same height as Napoleon, too, so it kind of works. Neopop, AWB, Passed House Judiciary, apparently doesn't even have all Dem House members on board. DOA and Senate? Yes, it's DOA. What do you think is the future for gun control? I think it's going to get torn apart by the judiciary mainly, and hopefully after the midterms by a Republican legislature. We'll see what happens. Lev Polyakov, good morning, Sticks. Not graveyard shift, but waking up with the sun now. Thoughts on mass adoption of nuclear power? That so-called green movement is against it. Nuclear is more green than most green energy, although it still requires fossil fuel to mine the uranium. All roads lead to extracting liquefied hydrocarbons out of the ground. There is no other alternative. None of them long-term really make sense. You'd probably build a generator to use old spent fuel rods and use the ambient radiation as a source of electricity if you really wanted to, but Alan Anti-State, my dude, I love you, but how can you deny climate change? Just because commies really like it doesn't mean it's fake. I literally can see it everywhere. Well, no, you can see the weather change. Your lifespan isn't long enough to even quantify such things. We're talking about spans of hundreds or thousands of years. To be clear, I don't disbelieve in the climate changing. What I do disbelieve in are several things. Number one, how large of a role do humans play? That is, it is, as far as I know, indeterminate. Number two, the solutions that are offered all boil down to NIMBYism and stupidity. The rich still drive their limos and their private jets. They're not out there on their hands and knees planting seedlings. They're not giving up their McMansions in Martha's Vineyard 1 foot above sea level. And they're partying with the scientists that supposedly know everything about this, and yet they're doing nothing in their personal lives to help. They're just telling other people to make do with less. It seems like a grift to me. The third problem is that the solution, the real solution, would require mass depopulation through one means or another. Because if you believe that climate change is man-made and a threat, if it's not a threat, you don't care. If you believe that, you need to go back to a pre-industrial society with a population below that of the 1850s and 60s. Is that feasible? Is that possible? The answer is no. Now, people are not going to take back up the wooden plow and get back on horses and become pastoral or agriculturalist in nature and be 90% farmers and go back to a city-state model. It's just not feasible. It's not going to happen. And they know this. They're just simply trying to grift more tax money. So they'll take more of people's money and they'll take more of people's power and they'll use climate change as an excuse to censor them without doing anything meaningful. If it were real and a threat and they genuinely believe this, they would be out there planting trees as we speak. They wouldn't be giving speeches on the tarmac from their back of their private jet. They would be out there planting trees. They would be out there picking up garbage. They would be reducing their own lifestyles. The rich and famous would not be living in 50-bedroom mansions. They'd be living in goddamn yurts. But you're not going to see that happen because they don't think that it's a threat. They're just telling you that it's a threat so you'll give them more money. It's the same as in war. They're not signing up and grabbing their M14 and going over to some jungle somewhere. They're telling you that your kid should do that so that they can get more money for their arms dealer buddies. Vessel of Amala. Turtles have a very tangy flavor followed by a somewhat bitter aftertaste similar to liver. It isn't bad, but few animals taste like it. Yeah, I'd like to try turtle meat sometime. So yeah, the second news story, Italy's government is collapsing, along with Panama and Sri Lanka, and at least at the executive level, the UK. Elements of the US government are being torn apart, happening all over the world. By the way, I wonder if any of the problems in Italy have to do with the protests that they're having there. They have their own tractor protests, same as you have here in the Netherlands. I wonder if that tipped the balance in favor of the government dissolving. Well, fuck, we're going to end up just like the Dutch. We can't deal with this. Oh my God. I don't want to see hay bales on the road. I've got my limo or limo fleet in the case of politicians usually. I got to get around. Oh, finally, the next one loaded. Excellent. It, by the way, links in the description, cross-platform if you want to follow along. This one might take 5 or 10 minutes to load, but Justice Department and liberal media are AWOL on Hunter Biden's laptop. This is from the Washington Examiner. Yes, indeed. You may have remembered the story many days ago that Hunter Biden's laptop had synced files that were finally cracked open and released to the public, showing that Joe Biden lied objectively to the American public with regards to business conversations with Hunter, showing Hunter engaged in even more aberrant behavior than we already knew that he was engaged in. That's Hunter's side of it, so it's less meaningful. But we know that Joe Biden was involved in this, and we know that he lied to the entire public while campaigning and thereafter. Have you heard literally anything about it in the last week from the legacy media? No, of course not. No, they're covering it up. Before, they covered it up by saying the laptop wasn't real, the files aren't real. We're not going NPR. We're not going to look into it because there's nothing to look into. You know, basically covering the ass of the incoming asterisk administration. Now they're not doing that. They're simply not talking about it at all. They would rather not even have the conversation. Now that they've been forced to admit to people that the laptop exists, the content actually has been forensically checked. It is indeed real. And it shows Joe Biden presumably involved in illegal behavior and at the very least having lied to the entire public. They simply don't want to talk about it. It's a lie by omission. Normally lies by omission are within articles or something. So you simply, there's a juicy story, and you leave out the parts that are inconvenient for political or social or religious or other reasons. With this lie by omission, it's more like they got together, circled the wagons around Biden, said, well, look, we can't spin this story. We've already admitted that the laptop's real. These new files have come out. If we tell the American people, yeah, by the way, Joe completely lied to all of you, that's going to tank his support even faster than it's already tanking. That would not be good for the entire Dem party that backed him up during that election for their midterm chances. Or the neocons, by the way, that jumped aboard and pulled a Bernie Sanders. You'll remember, nobody cares about your damn emails, Miss Clinton. Things like that. It wouldn't be a good look now, would it? Oh, well, I know what we'll do. We just won't report on it at all. It's not newsworthy. Yeah, it's real. Yeah, he lied to people. Who cares? It's shove it under the rug, basically. That's what they're doing. Alan Anti-State. Moi, NATO #1. We shall defeat Putin, the pure evil. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of some of NATO's actions, although I do say, again, I support the people of Ukraine's right to sovereignty. And I'm unrepentant about that fact. Mojo Hansen. I've been living in New Zealand for the past 2 years. Jacinda Ardern is the female Justin Trudeau. They are both communists, more popular overseas than here. Yeah, then why do they keep getting reelected? I'm beginning to lose faith in the diaspora of the former British Empire. I'm thinking that some of their colonies are worse off now than if they were under the fucking rule of the crown still. Ryan Von Cartian, this is Twitch. Yes, I am indeed live on Twitch as well as YouTube and Rumble. Looking at the Rumble comments as well. Yeah, Adius actually on Rumble makes a good point. North Carolina, for example, was nearly all farms and now is covered in relatively new growth. There is reforestation happening in large parts, especially of North America and parts of Europe as well. That is true. It's happened in Vermont also. My mom has remarked on this before. She was a child in the 70s, and she's remarked repeatedly on how over that course of time, from when she was a child, a lot of farms had already gone fallow by then because the dairy industry and stuff began to dry up and move to the Midwest and the South. And Vermont was 90% deforested in the 1950s or 60s. It was primarily farm. You wouldn't have recognized it. There are postcards from that time period, and it doesn't look anything like Vermont today. Tourists don't even realize that virtually all the forests in Vermont are fairly new growth. Almost all of it is under 50 years old. And if it's over 50 years old, it's under 100 years old 99% of the time. Yes, there's reforestation happening. Where the deforestation is happening is in the tropics. Certainly in Indonesia and Borneo especially, it's a huge problem because of palm oil growing. The orangutans there are being destroyed by this, by the way. China is trying to reforest areas of the country they can't develop, but they've done a huge amount of damage. The Amazon, for example, in Brazil especially, and the Congolese Basin, I think, #1 on the list, really, of places that are getting fucked. So there is reforestation, which is good. Climate change, again, if it is real and if it is actually a threat, humans would have to make such drastic changes to address it that your entire way of life, like what we're doing right now with the internet, it wouldn't exist. You would be going out and you would be farming 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. That would be your reality 90% of the time. The Grizzly, who do you think the Dem dark horse is? Or do you think it will be Kamala Harris? I don't know if the doctor can stop her from running. Well, technically, you can't stop Joe Biden from running. It's entirely possible, although I think unlikely that he actually is crazy enough to seek another term. By the way, I hope that happens because number one, he loses, which is good for the United States. Number two, it'd be a freak show. So that'd be, funny. I would say Buttigieg is near the top. Newsom is on the list, although I don't think he's actually near the top. I think some of that's bravado. Again, Joe Kennedy would have a chance. He could run on the I told you so platform and basically throw Biden under the bus and say, look, he adopted too many of these left-wing policies and it wrecked the economy. That's why you lost. I was the moderate. I got kicked off by a leftoid, and we told you so. We need to go back to the way that Johnny Kennedy used to do business. He could theoretically do that, and you can definitely find worse candidates. And he's young, reasonably well-spoken. He's being massively underrated, to tell the truth. The same as Gillibrand would be on the top of the list. Again, if she can gain traction, unlike she did the last time around. Amy Klobuchar, for what it's worth, would be somewhere in the middle, at least in that mix. Alan Anti-State. Congress run when? If you're talking about me, I would never run for any federal position because then I'd have to go to D.C. And I hope never to have to step foot in D.C. No, thank you. I like to keep my feet dry. Get a E. Hi, will Russia invade Finland? My aunt is scared. Well, it'd be like the Winter War and they would lose. I don't think that they want to invade Finland. They've tried that before. It didn't work too well. Hopium Gardner, Trudeau, WEF. Ardern, WEF. Macron, WEF. Boris Johnson, WEF. See where I'm going with this? Yeah, there's a lot of globaloids in power, unfortunately. Mojo Hansen, I've been following Redacted on YouTube, one of my favorite independent shows, other than you, of course. Lol. I'm glad that you made the other than you. Jim Morrison, M1 Garand action is uber ergonomic. The M1A box mag versus the clip of the M1 and price point of NATO 308 versus 30-06 deems M1A the choice over the M1. Also, 308 ammo can feed an AR-10. M1A for the win. Sounds good to me. Yeah, something in 308 is probably a good idea. There are bears back in Vermont where I'm from. So, yeah, the Justice Department and the media are not talking about Hunter Biden's laptop, even though there's illegal material on there, just to be clear. Then we also have the next news story, markets now on CNN Business. So take everything that you read there with a grain of salt. Crypto is making a big comeback. Will it last? As of today, of course, it was down a bit, if I remember correctly. Looking at my portfolio. Yes, crypto has rebounded fairly decently. Not just Bitcoin, but the altcoins and some of the shit coins as well. They all tend to peg together for the most part. I am still holding on for dear life. To be clear, yes, I realize crypto is now much lower than it was a year ago. I've lost, technically speaking, if you just look at it that way, I've lost quite a bit of money. I'm still holding all of my crypto and, in fact, prepared to potentially buy more. I'm still looking at my income from the live streaming, actually, for that. Seeing, I like to plan things because, of course, I want to build up a nest egg for my daughter. There's bills to pay, rent, and so forth. I don't make risky investments. To be clear, neither should you unless you're goddamn nuts. And by the way, disclaimer, this segment, of course, is my own personal opinion. I am not a financial advisor, and I'm not giving you financial advice. In my own opinion, I don't like to make risky investments. I want to make sure that I have enough on hand to last for many months, even if every source of income and value dried up completely, other than the money I happen to have on hand at the time. This is why I also hold silver, why I invest in lead. These are good investments, in my opinion. I think that crypto has not even close to seen its top. I do believe that it will rise considerably over the next few years, and I'm going to ride the gravy train. If I'm wrong, I've lost thousands of dollars. Oh, well, it fucking sucks losing money. If I'm right, though, I have the ability to gain much more than just thousands of dollars. And that's really the gamble that I'm taking with it, with some investment of my own money into it. I believe that it has a usefulness that is barely being recognized. And part of this I base on the actions of corporations, banks, and governments. They're all delving into crypto. So far as I can see, none of them have gotten back out of crypto, really, despite the fact that there's a lull in the price. That belies their true belief, which is actually that when it's in a lull, it's just a buying opportunity. Even if they're just brutally speculating, governments and banks alike, there is the potential for that rise, because what do they not want to do? They don't want to lose money. And it's really as simple as that. No Yanas. Difference between recession and depression. Recession is when things suck. Depression is when things suck way, way worse for a longer period of time. We'll see what happens with the Joe Biden economic situation. Jury's still out on how deep the recession will be. I mean, we're clearly already in one. But will it be V-shaped? Will it be more prolonged? Will it be double dip? Will it go deeper and become depression? Will you get stagflation? Nobody really has the answers to this, although we do have the answer to one thing. We are effectively in a recession and have been since the beginning of the year. Kyle Trimbach, the biggest problem with the science of climate change is that they purposely ignore the overwhelming effects of the sun. Well, no, the biggest problem with it is that all the suggestions that they make for how to cure it, how to prevent climate change from worsening or make it go away, are NIMBYism. They won't actually work. That's my big problem with it. If you really believe that, oh my God, the earth is warming, we're going to be like Tatooine, then go fucking plant some trees. Plant 200 or 300 trees and offset your entire carbon footprint for the next decade. Problem solved. The Grizzly, my phone auto-corrected. I meant the DNC. Do you think they would hold her down and force a primary, or would IDPOL revolt amongst their leftoid base to keep them paralyzed? Imagine them try and replace Kamala with Joe Kennedy. Yeah, it would be very problematic for them if Kamala decides to run, because it's not clear how the Democrats, as an IDPOL party now, can prevent her from winning without her saying, well, you only hate me because I happen to be non-white. You only hate me because I happen to have ovaries. Not that that's meaningful anymore. There is no definition for woman. Men can get pregnant and all this horse shit from Tumblr. So that being said, she might not be able to capitalize on that. Mojo Hansen, saw your debate the other day. I felt bad for her. I thought it was a fun debate. Mr. Wonderful, Al Gore, still darling of the climate cult, said the polar ice caps would be mostly melted by 2012. Yes, indeed. Fact check. Absolutely true. Al Gore also, I think, proposed that there'd be no snow by now in most northern latitudes. So basically, like here in the Netherlands, there should be nothing but palm trees, like fucking bananas and coconuts everywhere. So yeah, crypto is rebounding. We'll see what happens over the next week or so. Next news story, Biden's assault on Border Patrol agents continues, even though they were exonerated. Do you remember the Border Patrol agents that appeared to be whipping Haitian illegals? And it turned out, of course, those were bridles and reins. They weren't whips at all. And that never actually happened. Border Patrol was accosted by a large group of illegal immigrants, and they responded. And people took some pictures, and they cherry-picked them very carefully before they gave them to CNN and other groups. And therefore, Joe Biden came out and said, this is unacceptable. This is not what America is about, whipping poor immigrants, little kids, when they're trying to come across the Rio Grande. The problem being none of this actually happened. Now, it has been shown that this never happened. The actual case has been completely decided. There's no case to be made. The agents acted lawfully. They did not harass anyone. They did not whip anyone. They didn't stomp anyone with their horses. If anything, they were getting roughed up by a huge swarm of people who were at a weak point in the border, and Border Patrol didn't have enough numbers to make sure that everything was orderly. Joe Biden refuses to go back and apologize, number one, for his statements against his own Border Patrol agents, and number two, refuses to recant the mythology that there was a whipping of the migrants going on there. Well, look, here's these white border agents whipping these black people from Haiti, who, Haiti is part of an island, so they clearly came over by ship. Just to be clear, they didn't just magically materialize in Mexico. They got there before they got to the U.S. border in the first place. Let's not ask questions about how that occurred, by the way. Yeah. They immediately, recently, the result of a 10-month investigation by U.S. Customs and Border Protection's Office of Professional Responsibility was finally released. The resulting 511-page report fully exonerates the Border Patrol of the whipping hoax, declaring there is no evidence that agents involved in the incident struck, intentionally or otherwise, any migrant with their reins. Yet the agents were faulted with administrative violations, including yelling at the illegal aliens to stop and using the wrong radio frequency for communicating with the patrol station. Essentially, the Border Patrol is blamed for the unlawful action of the migrants. Why am I not fucking surprised? From the Biden administration, it's clear they don't want the border to be protected. They want these people to come in so they can be used as slaves. Meanwhile, they will astroturf the concept that they want them to come in because we need to take the tired and poor. We need to help the poor people of other countries, which no nation actually has the responsibility to do that unless some harm has been inflicted by that nation onto another. For instance, you bombed your neighbor. A bunch of orphans are trying to come across the border. Well, you bombed them, you created the orphans, so naturally you are responsible for that. The U.S. is in no way directly responsible at the civic and collective level for the shit that goes on in Haiti, unless you count the Clinton Foundation. Why don't you send all of these migrants to Hillary Clinton's mansions? She's only in one of them at a time. You know, when she's there, they can just go and camp out on the lawn in their tents or their yurts or something. Otherwise, let them live in Hillary Clinton's mansions. I think that would be justice. Put them there. Mojo Hansen. Why are progressives so unpragmatic when it comes to climate? They have big lofty dreams that they want to force on the world. They are the authoritarians. Yeah, well, don't call them progressives because they don't represent progress. That's the other problem. That's an old term from 100 years ago that in one time actually had meaning. It no longer has the same meaning that they want to pretend it does. Silver Kestrel. Crypto will be useful until the coming nuclear war wipes out the northern hemisphere. Well, you could say the same about paper money. Nobody's going to accept pieces of paper when tangible goods are the only thing that matters. They won't use it anymore. In that sense, it's exactly the same. I like it when people are like, well, cryptocurrency is not actually money or not actually a tangible thing. What's tangible about the dollar except you can use it as Tinder or wipe your ass with it or deface it with a political message or something? You'd be better off buying Funko Pops for the apocalypse. That's going some. Next news story. The Army cuts force size amid unprecedented battle for recruits. I wonder why they could be having trouble recruiting people into the U.S. Army today. Washington, AP. The Army is significantly cutting the total number of soldiers it expects to have in the force over the next 2 years, as the U.S. military faces what a top general called unprecedented challenges in bringing in recruits. Army officials said the service will fall about 10,000 soldiers short of its planned end strength for the fiscal year, and prospects for the next year are grimmer. Army General Joseph Martin, Vice Chief of Staff for the Army, said it is projecting it will have a total force of 466,400 this year, down from the expected 476,000. And the service could end 2023 with between 445,000 and 452,000 soldiers, depending on how well recruiting and retention go. Just 2.5 months to go in the fiscal year, the Army has achieved just 50% of its recruiting goal. Now, why could this be a problem? Let's brainstorm and find out why people aren't joining the Army. Now, it's very, very interesting. You have a situation right now in the United States where much of the actual job growth is underemployment. So people not making a lot of money, that's number one. In which there are significant economic problems, number two. Under normal circumstances, joining the military if you're young and reasonably healthy is a great way to get out of economic problems. You've got your 3 hots and a cot, you've got your salary, although it's very low, and later on, you get all sorts of employment opportunities. Hey, you're a veteran, whether you were in war or not. Yeah, we'll give you preferential hiring. A lot of businesses will do that. You can get tech training. You can learn engineering. You can learn aeronautics. You can get the equivalent of a fucking degree. If you decide to go for a degree afterwards, you get a shit ton of write-off on your student loans. Joining the military, economically speaking, for people from the lower echelons, typically over the last few decades especially, has been a boon. It's the right thing to do. I joined the Coast Guard and spent 6 years at sea, and now I basically get free college education. And I learned how to blow my enemies up, so that was pretty cool. I joined the Navy and spent 4 years overseas. I got to meet interesting people and occasionally shoot at them. And now all of a sudden, I know how to build a car from the wheels up. I wonder if I'll get an automotive job after I do a little bit of an internship. It's a good thing, but people aren't signing up. So we have to look for a different reason. It's not the economy. That's clearly not why people aren't signing up. Could it be the wokeness? Could it be that people don't have any respect for the U.S. military at the moment and see no reason to join up? I think that's part of it, but I think there's also one other part. People right now are worried that the president of the United States is batshit insane and that he might start a nuclear war. What worse place to be than in the front lines if something pops off with the Russians? A lot of people, I think, right now are very worried that U.S. troops are going to start showing up in Ukraine. I mean, more than the advisory positions they have in Kiev already. And I don't think that most people want to be part of that. You know, at least you've got one fringe benefit. You have a nuclear war, the MREs will glow in the dark. So when the electricity's out, you'll still be able to find your food supply. Sigil Stone 17, the number of soldiers is down, but the budget is up. I wonder where the money could possibly be going. Yes, the military budget, half of it's going to Ukraine right now, I guess so. Biden has taken troop readiness and really screwed it in the ass, chocolate style. Battle Elf, open borders means more third world lovers for Hunter Biden. Yeah, Hunter Biden appears to have a thing for disadvantaged women, so he wants more Haitians in the country. The age doesn't matter to him. I wonder if the gender does. He seems to be in weird shit. So yeah, I mean, the fact that the military is having recruitment problems during a recession, during an inflationary recession, is historically strange. A lot of the times people will join up and say, okay, I'll march around for a few years. I get my food for free. I get my bed for free. I'm not a burden on my family because, you know, I'm in Iraq or something. And I'll learn some skills, hopefully. And then I'll get preferential treatment in hiring afterwards. It'll make things a little bit easier. Can it be a sacrifice? Yeah, of course. You're going to have to carry 1,000 pounds of fucking body armor and shit around and wander around in the desert maybe somewhere. go to the recruitment center and you get shipped off to some jungle. If you're lucky, maybe you go to Korea, I suppose. That'd probably be the most fun place to be at the moment. You get to be along the DMZ. There might be a nuclear war there too, but you get to eat kimchi and shit. Cross-training with the Korean forces must be real fun. But they're not doing it. They're not taking part in this anymore. They've got a massive recruitment shortage. The fact that Biden has managed to cause that to happen through his own lackadaisical behavior, while there is an economic issue, is frightening, honestly. And then we have some shenanigans with regards to propaganda about the climate. This is from Vox, so of course propaganda applies. Europe is burning like it's 2052. The extraordinary heat wave in Europe is showing what's possible already and what lies ahead under climate change. Yes, there was a red warning in the UK for heat. They were recording temperatures on the tarmac at Heathrow and were surprised to find that they were quite hot. And it hit here. It was about 95 degrees a couple of days ago here. Thankfully, that day it was a little drier. Yesterday was worse somehow. It was like upper 80s, but it was really humid. It felt kind of like Tampa, and I was sweating like a stuck pig, I will admit. But, I mean, if you've lived your entire life in northern or northwestern Europe, please go to southern Texas, go to Florida, go to the fucking Sahara or something. You probably got agreements of travel with half those countries because you colonized them. And then tell me about hot temperatures. This is a 2-day heat wave. You're not talking about weeks and weeks unending of tropical balmy temperatures that are on par with what you would get maybe in Malta or something like that. You're talking about a couple of days where it happens to be hot. There were a bunch of fires, and my immediate reaction was, what do people do during hot weather? Which, you know, maybe they shouldn't do it if it's also dry. They fucking barbecue. They cook outside over an open fire. And they cook up their chorizo or their hot dogs or whatever, armadillo steaks or whatever the hell else they happen to want to eat. Does this or does this not contribute to forest fires? I think that we found the problem. That and arson, by the way. I'm sure that some of the green energy lobby would love to have some fires to talk about too. The fact is this. Having a heat wave does not mean the world is burning up, we're turning into Tatooine. If that were true, then anytime there's a polar vortex, I guess you can resurrect Leonard Nimoy and the late 1970s with In Search Of and the coming ice age and say, well, I guess we better buy more SUVs because otherwise we're all going to die and there's going to be mammoths walking around on the glaciers again. No Yanas probably has to do with targeting a demographic that hates them and actively antagonizing the people actually willing to join. Yes. Censored sent one, I don't know if that's a euro or pound, actually. My apologies. No comment. Thank you. But yeah, I mean, there are people that were talking about, well, I'm here during this heat wave. I can vouch for it hasn't been this hot ever. That's a total anecdote, dude. You don't know exactly the temperatures unless you want to dig back through the nerds' data. And you have to take it at exactly the same spot and then hope that there's no outside factor that would influence the local temperature either. And same with CO2 emissions. Start reading CO2 emissions, and then a factory goes up next door that emits CO2, and all of a sudden, oh my God, the CO2 level has gotten so much higher. Some of the scientific equipment involved, there are some shenanigans and statistics involved in their measurements, just to be clear. What I would say is this, again, the climate of course changes. We don't know what direction it's going to change in over even the immediate future. We just have a bunch of theories. We don't know what a role humans play. We don't know what role any of the actions that we're taking to try to stop that might play. Most of them appear to me to be NIMBYist bullshit. Nobody's planting trees or picking up garbage because that requires effort. They're just asking for more tax money. While printing more money to pay for more pet project solar farms is not going to stop the evil of climate change. Neither will NIMBYist Paris Climate Accords sending those same factories to China and India that never play by the rules anyway. If anything, the emissions get higher because they have less scrubbing technology. Silver Kestrel, this warm period will last about 2 centuries. If we are lucky, it will last longer than that. If we're lucky, we might get a 3rd or 4th century actually out of it. Again, when we're talking about the span of tens or hundreds of thousands of years for the decline in overall temperature, the difference between 200 and 300 years really seems slight now, doesn't it? We could get 300 or 400 years out of it easily. Or it could end 50 years from now and I could still be alive, fucking ancient as the sands of time, and I'm sitting there saying it's cold. And it's no longer a meme about old people because it really is a glacier outside. Censored then said 5 euros. Again with no comment though. Thank you. Sigilstone 17. Europeans don't bitch about something, challenge impossible. Seems YouTube doesn't like the dreaded B word. Yeah, it is funny to see people complaining about 90 degrees. Come on, I know it's hotter than it normally gets here, but I mean, fucking Jesus Christ, dude. Even back in Vermont, occasionally you get a hot day hotter than that. And it'll be full humidity, just to be clear. As all those trees begin respirating, yeah, it's going to be a little bit hazy. And it'll also trigger people's asthma. They're talking about 1,000 people dying in Portugal over the course of the heat wave. I want to see some statistics about that and see how many of these people actually died of heat stroke. You're in Portugal, dude. It's not exactly a cool climate. Christ, you colonize Brazil, but you can't deal with 95 degrees for a couple of days? No wonder your empire failed. Student of history, it's been hotter in human history. Keck. Yeah, much hotter. We don't even have to go back to ancient history. Mojo Hansen, I quit my job to teach piano. Best thing I've done. I make more money and my own schedule. More time with my wife and kids is priceless. Sounds excellent. Man, I don't know what job you had. If teaching piano is making more money, then that's great. You might get carpal tunnel syndrome at some point, but hopefully not. Next piece of news, Wall Street Silver tweeting this out. Tanks are being put on the streets in China to protest the banks. Oh, to protect the banks, rather. This is because the Henan branch of the Bank of China declaring that people's savings in their branch are now investment products and can't be withdrawn. Yes, China has begun to use its corporate and banking allies to limit withdrawals to prevent bank runs. This is not an isolated incident. There was a super thread a few days ago, and I was going to make a video on it, but I had too much other stuff that I had to cover, so I had to bump it, and then it was no longer current 3-4 days later, so I said, fuck it. China is having problems right now with banks being unable to allow people to withdraw. There is a mortgage boycott in parts of China. That is that people are refusing to make their mortgage payments, compacting the problem. You do have rising inflation there, although it's not on the same order as Bidenomic inflation. Although we don't really know. The problem is that China always cooks the books, so we're not sure. You have effectively a collapse in the growth in the Chinese economy. They came in far below expectations for both Q1 and Q2. They're almost negative. China's not doing so well right now. As I've said for years, they are effectively a paper tiger. They're ready for the matchstick to burn them up. China has been entirely prefaced on foreign investment and manipulation and stealing trademarks. It's not been prefaced on actually building long-term a stable economy. This is why China's buying up so much land elsewhere. It's why they're attempting to colonize parts of East Africa, and it's why Chinese billionaires buy so much land in the US. The Japanese did this as well back when they were growing quickly during the 80s and 90s. The reason is that if I'm a private investor, I'm in Japan in 1989, and I look at the Japanese economy and I'd say, well, how much more growth can we really squeeze in? We're getting overpopulated here. Things are slowing down. I want to invest in something I think will bring me a long-term income. I don't want to invest in something that's going to stagnate or collapse. So I invest in the United States. I buy a bunch of land, anchoring me to the country, allowing me to establish residency potentially. And then I buy a skyscraper. I buy a bunch of office buildings or condos or something. Happened over and over. And people in the US at the time thought that Japan was going to take over the US by doing this. They think the same thing about China right now. When they buy 1,000 acres of farmland, or a Chinese firm buys a US industry like a factory or something, I chuckle because people are interpreting it entirely the wrong way. It's a statement of dissatisfaction with the direction of the Chinese economy, and it's accelerating. Meanwhile, Western investors have been allured by China because of the quick money that you can make. But the quick money is fast depleting. It's no longer there to the same degree that it was 10 years ago. And so it's becoming a problem. My thought is that if China loses much of that investment, it collapses and its economy corrects. China effectively is one gigantic bubble. It puts up a Potemkin-style facade for the world to see so that it can keep grifting off the investment. Michael, what do you think about the water of Lake Tahoe? I've never been there. Is their water level low? It wouldn't surprise me. By the way, that might have been thunder. Jim Morrison, today's silver is $19 an ounce, same as 2008-ish. Inflation will jack it up someday. Buying land sounds good, but as we see, the not-seas will regulate you to death. Land is more precious than gold. Yeah, land is definitely the most valuable. You have your free roam and stuff, especially in a state with no property tax. Yes, I would like to invest more in silver. I'd like to get some junk silver coins. I'm wondering if anyone has a good connection for that where they can be bought in bulk, walking liberties and shit like that. I'd like to have a chest of of silver coins, my pirate treasure. 87 Sparky, U.S. probes China's Hawaii over equipment and cell towers near missile silos and bases, Reuters reports. That just hit. Well, that's very, very interesting. But since China controls half of Congress, I don't expect that the investigation will accomplish much. Don Browning, it's the coldest it's ever been here in Melbourne, I swear. Haha, sarcastic laugh. Yes, the weather changes. That's called climate change. William Latin, no one wants to join and get the magic needle. Who the fuck wants JoJo Dancer at the wheel? Tutus for everyone and pretend you like it. Okay. Sigil Stone, China sending tanks to a protest. Tiananmen 2, electric boogaloo coming soon to an alternative news source near you, which will in turn cause investors to pull out en masse and end the CCP. I wish that were the case. This isn't 1989 anymore, when China weaponizes and crushes people with tanks. Back then, investors didn't care because their growth was 10%. Now it's not. Now it's far lower than that. And China's got some other diplomatic issues too. John Wells just sent $100. Thank you very much, John. 2 truths on climate. There are now more trees than any time in recent human history. Secondly, from my time in military intel, we took very serious the connection between even faster movement of magnetic north of Earth and the change of climate. That's interesting. I don't know about the effects of magnetic north on the climate itself. It is true, though, your first point is absolutely salient, which is that, yes, indeed, I don't think the Earth has been this forested, in the temperate climates, I mean, in several hundred years. Large swaths of Europe, for instance, were basically strip-mined of trees all throughout the medieval period. Fucking Scandinavia didn't have any trees. The Vikings cut them all down to make longboats. England pillaged its own trees and eventually moved in on the Irish, causing problems there. The Netherlands, vast tracts of the Netherlands that are forested now, weren't forested 50 years ago. They've built quite an infrastructure on forestry, actually. You see it all the time. They got machines where they can drill down around the tree after cutting its branches down at the right time of year. And they core it out, roots and all. Massive ass root ball, probably as big as this fucking living room, and then load it, and then they move it to where they want, plop it in the ground, water it in, and it grows. Tree transplant. They do with trees what you would do with like a chamomile seedling. It's incredible. It's insane. Censored, 1858 temps in London, 48 degrees in the shade. Jesus. Be a little bit burdensome. So yeah, the Chinese are they're having their own meltdown, but it's not climate related though. Yeah, it's related to their banking sector beginning to collapse. Hopefully the people there will overthrow the commie government. It'd be the best thing for the world in a very, very long time if that happened. I'd be cheering them on. A lot of people would get shot by the GCOMs, but I think they would prevail since there's 2 billion of them. In the end, I don't know that the party loyalists would be able to stand up to the problem. Another news story from HuffPo. Be careful what you wish for, said the Utah senator, a vocal critic of GOP efforts to cast doubt on elections. This is, of course, referring to Mitt Romney. You know him better as Mitt Romney. You know, the magic underwear senator, the car elevator senator, the one who wanted to kill Big Bird, who had binders full of women and all of these other things. It's interesting how he was the evil, bigoted Satan Hitler incarnate back in 2012. Now he's a hero of some sort to the left. Romney coming out and giving them a warning not to prop up the MAGA candidates. See, the problem is this. The going logic, and it's really not logical, it is a mistake. Romney's not technically wrong on this, just to be clear, although for the wrong reasons. The trend is that the left keeps attempting to prop up certain individuals who are Trump-backed because they think that they'll be weaker in the midterms. It's not working. Meanwhile, they're also propping up Liz Cheney. She's been sucking down money from Democratic super PACs. She's begging Democrats to vote for her. I noticed that Romney doesn't mention that one, by the way, because of the J6 committee. In fact, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if Mitt Romney has presidential ambitions. If Trump is kept out, Romney may very well step in. Just to be clear, that's another prediction. There is a better than 50-50 chance that he's nuts enough to try a third time, or actually maybe fourth time. Can't remember which Romney attempt that we're on now. He would fail. He would not be nominated, which is the good news. But he may actually be crazy to attempt it. He's warning against attempting to elect these people through the primary process. But it's not going to work. Populism, that is the MAGA proportion of the Republican Party, is the popular part. It's also the much larger part at this point. The neocon thing has died. Romney, though, doesn't realize that because he is one of the neocons. He's still remembering his glory day in 2012 when he almost made it. And then for the last month of campaigning, inexplicably didn't even bother to campaign. He was the agent of his own misfortune there, and he lost for that reason. To be clear, he probably would have done a lot better against Obama if he had, I don't know, held a rally in the course of over a month before the election happened, but he chose not to. So when you're taking warnings, when you're taking advice from Mitt Romney, don't you think that you've got a problem even bigger than the one he has? Disturbed 2K7, I use Money Metal Exchange for silver. God bless you and your family. Money Metal Exchange. Let me look that up. Yeah, I'd like a nice little box of silver coins. I'll look that up and I'll check it later. Martin Kubat. Hey, Sticks, are you familiar with George Dumézil trifunctional hypothesis? If yes, what are your thoughts on it? No, I haven't. I know nothing about him or his trifunctional hypothesis. It sounds scientific, though, so I'm sure that it's intriguing. Over on Rumble, we've got Odeon. If you don't like YouTube, making it difficult to say whatever you want, well, that's not such a problem here in Rumble. Donate on all platforms. Yes, you can donate over on Rumble, by the way. In fact, they take quite a bit less of a cut than YouTube does. How many people are watching? By the way, yeah, we're almost at 10 Biden loser units, and it's, early, but it's not even 6 a.m. Eastern time. So I would have gone a little bit later, but again, a link in the chat if you're watching on YouTube. Please do bookmark it for about 2.5 hours from now. I will be live debating JF on the Crucible. We're going to be talking about abortion. So that'll be a star-studded event. It'll be much fun. I will be doing that later. Hella Radio lives. Sticks, did I miss your take on the boss bad guy killer in the Greenwood, Indiana Mall? So many lives saved and furious pro-gun control pundits. Yes, indeed. It's funny to see some of the headlines like, no, the good guy with the gun's not your friend. Hey, he wasn't supposed to have that gun in the mall. It probably saved dozens of people from being gunned down. I would say he's a good guy with a gun. Get rid of the mall rules against carrying a firearm. Like, look, if I go into a business when I'm back in the U.S. and they're like, no guns allowed, and I'm concealed carrying, they don't know. They don't have the ability to enforce the law. They can tell me to leave and I have to leave. But if they don't know the gun's there because I'm concealed carrying, they can fuck themselves. They can't say that they want to strip search me. They can't pat me down. They can't do fucking jack shit. I'm going to carry it in the store if I want to. And if they have a problem with it, then they just end up getting a very, very mad YouTube video about them. End up with some clankers with silly string or some shit. Havercamp Harassment Chronicles, you see my message? Yes, I can see you. So yes, Romney giving advice to the Democrats, which is characteristic. Next story, Joe Biden says he has cancer thanks to the oil industry, but White House points to skin cancer years ago. I covered this morning. Biden had another sundowner dementia moment, this one worse than almost all the others, in which he claimed that he had gotten cancer from the oil industry. I guess that's why he wants the gas prices to be $5 a gallon. The problem is that he doesn't have cancer. Well, I mean, that's not a problem because that means Kamala doesn't get into office so easily. So thank goodness. But it wasn't true. He was confusing multiple things from the past. President Biden said Wednesday that he has cancer, forcing the White House press office to quickly clarify, quickly being the key term there, that he was referring to skin cancer treatment that he had before taking office last year. The remark initially appeared to be a stunningly casual health announcement during a speech about global warming, in which he described emissions from oil refineries near his childhood home in Claymont, Delaware. That's why, and damn many other people grew up with have cancer, and why for the longest time Delaware had the highest cancer rate in the nation, Biden said. Are you sure it's not the inbreeding, Joe? You look like the grown-up version of the banjo kid from Deliverance. That might have something to do with your resistance against melanoma. White House spokesman Andrew Bates referred to the Post, a tweet from Washington Post columnist Glenn Kessler, who had noted that Biden had non-melanoma skin cancers before he took office. It's unclear why Biden chose to use a present verb tense to describe his experience with cancer. I'll tell you exactly why. It is not unclear. He was mistaking that for being contemporary and misattributing it because he was having a dementia moment. He didn't even mean to be misleading. He's just got dementia. He honestly thought that he had, I guess, cancer in the last few days. That's what he thought. He's got fucking dementia. This is a health crisis, but not because he's got cancer, because his brain is melting. Maybe he has Kuru, he's got fucking prions or something from cannibalizing small children. Sigil Stone 17. Did you see the bodega worker in New York that stabbed the thug had all his charges dropped? Alba, I think his name is. Yes, Jose Alba. I covered it in the live stream yesterday, which is good, although very, very belated. Havercamp Harassment Chronicles. No, my DM about the landlord harassment. See it? Yes, I did see it. I have not had a chance to watch it because when you sent it, I was watching, my baby daughter. And I don't want to put on anything in the background that has too much speech in it as opposed to like white noise because it might wake her up. When the baby is sleeping, you've got to be goddamn careful. Arnett23me, what channel will the debate be on? I have linked it. That is the actual live debate page on YouTube. It's going to be on the Crucible. It is linked in the description of this video, and it's also linked if you're watching on YouTube as you are. It is a pinned comment in the live chat off to the side. Assuming you're using desktop. I've never done that on a phone, so I have no clue if it'll be there. Scarfy the Strange. Oh, Scarfy the Strange. Democrats need a puppet, and he fits have their So far up his hole, call him Mitt. Travis Tolbert, Sticks, how much sympathy do you believe Biden dying in office would garner the Democrats? None. I don't think that it would have any measurable impact. A lot of Democrats would be like, whew, well, thank goodness he's gone. Oh, shit, Kamala's VP. That's right. Yeah, better move to Canada. Now we've got Marianne Williamson in the last bit of news here. This is just a funny piece. I had to throw this in here because it was amusing to me. Marianne Williamson, is Fox News even covering these fires and heat waves all over the world? And because, again, in the middle of summer, you never have heat waves, and there's never been a barbecue grill that accidentally started a grass fire or anything. That never happened before until recently. Clearly, the world would be like Tatooine very quickly. And then I replied, actually, and I said it's called summer, which is literally what you're seeing. When you have a heat wave in the middle of July in the Northern Hemisphere, that is called normal. Yes, there are droughts. There are also torrential rainstorms. Yeah, and so you're like saying, oh my God, we got 3 feet of snow, but it's winter. It's the middle of January. Of course you have 3 feet of snow. If you're in Vermont, that might be an underestimation. That doesn't mean climate change. It doesn't mean anything has changed. It means that it's weather. That's literally the only thing that has changed is the weather change. In Vermont, if you want the weather to change, you just wait 10 minutes, and trust me, it probably will. The fact is that Marianne Williamson, the crystal-gazing hippie mom, who was briefly relevant in the Democratic Party by basically being the opposite of like a Clinton when it came to foreign policy issues, doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. If climate change is real, and we'll just play devil's advocate and say it is, and if it's man-made, let's just admit to that for the purposes of argument. What are you going to do about it? Assuming that you've also established that it's a threat. What the fuck are you going to do about it? Complain on Twitter? Buy another car so that you can drive around to rallies to try to rally other people in favor of a green energy policy? What you should be doing is starting a civic movement, a back to the earth sort of thing, to get people to abandon cities and live off the grid in fucking tents and plow up their own crops and not rely on the government, because the government would have caused half the problem. Through priming the pump industrialization policies and energy policies, the government would be 90% of the responsibility for the issue. How much fossil fuel do you think an M1 Abrams tank needs to use in order to move a couple of miles? Probably a little bit more than your car now, isn't it, Marianne Williamson? It's NIMBYism. Hey, we've got some pragmatic policies. We can't do too much about climate change, but we can tell people to stop eating steak and eat the bugs because we want to open up a new food market. One that'll be really efficient and make us lots of money. We're not going to plant trees. We'll just tell people what they can and cannot do with their front yard garden. We're not going to do anything about glyphosates on commercial farms, but we're going to stop you from using Miracle Grow on your crops in your backyard garden. That's what it's all about. It's NIMBYist bullshit. None of the solutions of the climate change crowd will work. Doom on you. New here. What's a clank? That's when you take your spoon and leave it in the cup when you're drinking coffee or tea. Ilhitu. A lot of bad things that they're wishing on, Sticks. Wait, that they're wishing on me or wishing to happen? I don't know which one you mean. I think you dropped a comma in there. Oh no Oxford comma. Oh my God, I will die. The editor in me is literally melting at the moment. The Sinister Siblings, speaking on vehicles, why not go full pre-war Fallout and make nuclear-powered cars? Yeah, I mean, if you can make that work, it'd be pretty cool. Yeah, this baby gets 10,000 miles to the fuel pellet. That'd be cool. The real problem is lithium mining. Well, that's one of the main problems. Minerals in general. That'll come from North Korea mainly. Who do you think is mining the lithium? It's being mined in Uganda or North Korea, either by little kids who die before they're 35 usually. That's the average lifespan of a mine worker in most of South and East Africa. Or they're mined by gulag slaves in North Korea. If you're lucky, it came from China. Then the 12-year-old is technically free to leave the job at any time. They just get beaten a few times first, maybe raped. See, the Chinese, they're much more humanitarian than the North Koreans or the African tin horns that generally mine the lithium. Outas85, Sticks, what will the political and election impact be of farmer protests in the Netherlands? Clank out of 10.2. I don't know what impact it'll have on politics here. That remains to be seen. But most of the population supports the farmers. By the way, please no more super chats, because we're already at 1:10 roughly. I've got other things that I have to do. I already had some leftover yummies that I cooked yesterday. By the way, the cauliflower that I cooked the other day, I posted about this yesterday on Twitter, was absolutely delicious. I was worried it was going to be one of those meals where it smells really good when you cook it. You've probably had a meal like this. Smells delicious. Then you bite into it and it's bland, or it's too sour, or it's too spicy or something, and it's not particularly good. This was actually delicious. You take the cauliflower, you marinate it with some oil or of some sort, turmeric, a bit of salt, and lemon juice, actually, beforehand. And then just a little bit of curry madras. You just let it soak in. It gets all colorful, and then you put it and you bake it in the oven or roast it. I thought it was delicious. I never knew that lemon would go well with cauliflower. Amelia Moore mentioning gazpacho. I have made it. It's very good. I'm getting more and more into cooking. I want to learn how to make palak paneer, which is an Indian dish. It uses paneer, which is sort of a compacted cottage cheese, and you cook it with like a spinach mix. It's really, really good. I've had it before, but I've never made it. So yeah, I think I'll go off now. I hear the baby flummoxing upstairs as well. So as good a time as any to end the live stream. Hope you all had fun. Lots and lots of news that we had to cover. Some of which I also covered separately this morning in one-off videos. And yes, to Mab Zero fan, tikka masala is very good as well. That's about all. Peace out.